Peace and Yah bless. Yah is a strong one. The strong one is Yah. He's a tree of life. He's a fountain of living waters. He's the spirit and creator of all things that live and breathe. On this particular discourse, I'm going to talk about naturally what you see in front of you, concubinage. Okay? Or being a concubine and exactly what that's all about. Okay? Because many people see it in the Bible. It's mentioned in the Bible in the book of remembrance several times. A lot of people don't really know what a concubine is, right? And in these days and times, I'm not quite sure we're quite on par with what exactly they were doing, but we can certainly assume by what was happening in the book of remembrance. As you guys already know, in the book of Genesis, chapter 35, verse 22, if you guys know the lineage of the 12 sons of Israel, they, well, in particular, Reuben, he was the firstborn. But later on, you see that Judah ended up being the lead tribe. Okay? Well, Judah got to being the lead tribe because Reuben made a very, very egregious mistake with his father's concubine. Okay? Now, let's go look at it real quick. Okay? Genesis, go there in your book. 35, verse 22. And it came to pass, it says, when Israel, now that's Jacob, right? Who's named, Israel by Yah, right? When Israel dwelt in the land, that Reuben, so check it out, it says, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. Okay? And Jacob, we call him Israel, and Israel heard it. So he heard about it. Okay? Now the sons of Jacob were 12. Okay? All right. So this was the egregious mistake that Reuben made that got basically his firstborn rights taken away. That's why Judah today is known as the lead tribe. Now, had Reuben not made that mistake, then Reuben would have been the lead tribe. Okay? Simple as that. All right? All right. So he made an egregious mistake and went and laid with Bilhah. Because if you know the story of Jacob, it was Rachel, Leah, Zilpah, and Bilhah. It was those four ladies, right? Now, if you remember the story, Leah and Rachel got into this gigantic heated battle over childbirth. Okay? So when Rachel couldn't birth, she went and got her concubine. I mean, not her concubine, her handmaiden. Okay? Which was Bilhah. And then Zilpah was the other one, right? The other handmaiden, right? They went and got her for Jacob, and Jacob naturally lay with them and, had sons with him, okay? And those were basically his set of wives, all four of those ladies, okay? So, a concubine, really, as far as we see in the book, a concubine is sort of like she doesn't have the same rights as the other wives, okay? She doesn't have she's not, on the same sort of level with the other wives, okay? In our heritage, in Israel. So, some would say she's kind of like, I guess you would call her, a sex mate or a sex partner. So, but she belongs to her husband. Or if it's a king, then she belongs to the king. She's like his sex partner. Whenever, he wants to have sex with her, he does. I mean, that's just kind of the way concubinage, as far as we can see, that's kind of the way it was. Okay? Because, she's still like a wife because, we take wives. We don't have girlfriends or anything like that. Okay? We just look at them always as wives, nothing else. So whenever a man of Israel, whenever we approach you in our heritage, we approach you from, the aspect of being a wife. We don't come to you about no dating and all that stuff right there. We come to you directly. Hey, I want you to be my wife. Okay, that's the heritage. We're not supposed to come at you with, from that weak point of view of being a girlfriend or whatever they do here in America. That we've learned. Generally, a man's always supposed to go find a wife. Okay, that's what he's supposed to do. And then he's favored by Yah whenever he goes and finds a wife, right? That's in Proverbs, right? You favored by God whenever you go find you a wife, okay? All right, now we know about Solomon, okay? They claim here in 1 Kings chapter 11 that Solomon had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, right? Now, he has so many wives, as you can see, this is obviously overkill, right? His wives turned his heart away. He had to, after these other gods and all that stuff, but only when Solomon got old, This wasn't when Solomon was a young man, but he still shouldn't have made that mistake because he should have been strong for Yah, no matter what happened, If they came up to him talking about them foreign gods, he should have got rid of them, because rid of those wives, because apparently he had enough of them, anyway. Okay. Now, I'm sure some women will probably say, man, that's an awful lot of women. But if you look at a man in America, when a man in America sleeps with all these women that they sleep with, it totals to about the same amount of women or way more. Probably for some of these men, it's somewhere in the thousands. You know what I mean? Okay. So don't look at this as being a lot. It's just King Solomon took him as wives. He didn't just sleep with him and then let him go, or they just jump offs, or whatever the case is. You know what I mean? Fly by nights, whatever you want to call it. Okay. In our particular periscope, we have to look at it like when we approach a woman, we approach her as, hey, I'm here to make you a wife. I'm not here to play no games. There's no such thing as girlfriends in Israel. Okay, in our heritage, there's no such thing as that in the Hebrew heritage. Okay, you don't go up to a woman talking about, hey, I want to be your boyfriend. Let's date for 3 years and then maybe I might marry you. No, you don't get that. You don't get that luxury in the Hebrew Israelite heritage. Okay, when you're approaching a woman, you approach her from the pretense of marriage. So the first thing you do, the first level is you meet her, maybe you guys talk, whatever the case is, or you communicate, and then you say, hey, well, I'm interested in you. I'm interested in marrying you. So do you want to be my wife, or whatever the case is? However you approach the woman. Basically, you should just betroth her to yourself. Okay? Now, the betrothal can last for a long time, because you guys can agree on the betrothal, a year, 2 years, whatever the case is. Whatever you guys, want to make it to be. It can be 1 month, okay? It doesn't matter, right? But you can betroth her to yourself, and that basically, locks her into you. The two of you all are basically locked into each other once you approach her about being betrothed. And she actually answers and says yes, okay? All right, so she's betrothed to you. Being betrothed still holds the same responsibility as being married, even though, maybe you guys haven't, what they call jump the broomstick or walk down the aisle or whatever the tradition may be that you may keep. Okay? Went before the justice of peace or whatever it might be. Okay? So, that being said, you betroth the woman first. Once she's betrothed, you can agree on a period of time, whatever the case is. Then you can actually have an actual ceremony and marry the woman officially. Okay? Now, some of the Jewish faiths, they have a ketubah, things like that. Same as a marriage license, all the same thing. If a woman should want that or require that. In the Hebrew Israelite custom, it's not really required. Like we said, basically, once you have sex with that woman, she really in the eyes of God, that's your wife. That's why you have to be very careful. Okay? In the eyes of the Creator, that's your wife. You know what I mean? You actually lay down with her, then that's your wife. That's the way He looks at it. That's the way He sees it. Okay? So once you perform that act, He sees it like that. All right? The same way when you go read in the book of Genesis about Jacob, about what happened with Jacob, even though Laban, his uncle, he liked the way Jacob was working. So he didn't want to let Jacob go because Jacob was a good worker. So he tricked Jacob, you know what I mean, into having sex with Leah, okay, whenever Jacob made a deal for Raquel. He said, look, man, I'll work for you 7 years for Raquel. So he made a deal for her, right? So Laban's like, okay, but Laban pulled a trick, one night, as you read in the book of Genesis, go read the story. And, Jacob, I'm quite sure he had to have been, drunk or drinking or doing something that Jacob was doing, that whenever Laban brought Leah into the room instead of Raquel, that Jacob didn't know the difference. Now, you notice whenever you read the story, because she has a veil on her face, right? She's veiled when she comes in. But obviously the next morning when Jacob gets up and pulls that veil up, Jacob was pissed off, okay? He was mad, because it was Leah. Now, here's the key to that story. Why was he mad? Because he knew he had sex with her, okay? He ejaculated into her, made her his wife. See, he knew the tradition already. Okay, he knew what was supposed to happen. Okay, no different than Isaac and Rebekah. Okay, now Isaac had never seen Rebekah before he met her. Okay, they just went and got Isaac a bride. Okay, of course they knew she was good looking, right? She's a virgin, right? So they brought that bride to Rebekah to Isaac. Isaac took her. Apparently he liked the way she looked. So he took her, to his mother's tent. He banged her like a man's supposed to, okay? And she became his wife. See, it's simple, man. It's all about the sexual act. That's what we call consummation. And as I told you guys about, even in the United States, if you walk down the aisle, you spend all that money and go before the justice of the peace and the marriage license and all that, but you don't go on that honeymoon and bang your wife, it's still not legal. You're not legally married until you, well, I don't want to say that word, but until you get it on, okay, until you get it on, you're not legally married. So your consummation, see, they're still doing the same thing. They just got you going through a bunch of paperwork, and contracts to contract you to whatever state you're in. For all those who don't know the magic of that, okay? Because whenever you sign those marriage licenses and all that paperwork, it's like being in a threesome. It's the state, it's the wife, and it's the husband. That's why they can come through, take children away and do all that kind of stuff, when a marriage goes, awry. So, something for you to think about, right? Okay. That's why in the Hebrew pantheon, we don't have to go through all that stuff. You know what I mean? You betroth a woman to you for a certain period of time. Even if that ain't really even needed. That's just maybe, if you want to secure her as a bride for later on. Okay. If you want to secure her as a bride for later on, like I said, maybe you're in different states, you live in different places, and you want to secure her as a bride, then you say, hey, I want to betroth you to myself because I want to secure you as a bride, meaning what? She can't touch another man sexually. That's what it means. Okay? That's the power of betrothal. And that is the magic of betrothal, because both parties are supposed to, to respect that, especially if the woman says yes, because when she says yes, it's basically the same as making a contract. Okay? Whenever you say yes, ladies, I want y'all to understand that. It's the same thing as making a contract. It's the same thing as saying yes whenever you go before a priest or whatever the case is. It's the same exact thing because you're making a vow. Because basically what you have done, you have vowed yourself to that man. Okay? So I want you to understand the process of betrothal. Okay? Even though maybe you haven't had an official wedding. But you don't even need an official wedding because at the end of the day, If you guys have a sex, if you guys, have sex, then that's all that's all God's got to see. Once he sees that sexual act, he's like, oh, you guys, y'all got it on. That's your wife. You know what I mean? And that's why Jacob was so upset about Leah. So Jacob had to do what? Work another 7 years, okay, for Raquel. So he spent 14 years on 2 women, but ended up with 4. So, because of the situation. And they were sisters. And you're not supposed to marry, 2 sisters in the same lifetime. In other words, if you marry one sister, the one has to pass away before you can marry the other. Okay? That's another custom, okay? Another part of our heritage. Can't take 2 sisters in the same lifetime, all right? So, betrothal is the first step. Okay? That's for me is just to, it's a process just to secure the bride. Like I said, maybe you guys live in different states or different parts of the world or whatever the case is, and you want to secure that woman as a bride, then both of you agree to a betrothal. Okay? And that's what you're supposed to do. All right? Then later on down the line, you want to, you have the marriage ceremony, okay, and so forth. Okay, so back to concubinage, okay? Now, concubinage. As you can see right here, it says, concubine, definition, all right? In a polygamous, it says society, okay, or societies. It says a woman who lives with a man but has lower status than his wife or wives, okay? So she's kind of like a sub-wife, okay? She has lower status. Now, she still lives with him, but she has lower status than the rest of the wives, okay? She's a concubine. That's what a concubine is. Like I said, basically the way I see it, it's just, the way I see it, it's like like a built-in sex partner. That's all I can say about it. I mean, because the concubine is just really it's a hard thing to try to explain, what they were doing with this back in, what they call the Old Testament, okay, the Book of Remembrance. And as you can see, Solomon had plenty of concubines, you know what I mean? 300 concubines. That's a lot of women, you know what I mean? For any man, but, maybe Solomon had it going on like that. So that's not a bad thing. But concubines, very, very, very important thing. Probably when we get back to the land, it'll be a very important thing. Okay? Concubines, I think that will probably still be in play, I would imagine. Okay? So I just want you guys to get some, a little background on what that is. Like I said, for me, as far as I can see, it's just like, she's still a wife, but she doesn't have the same level of degree as the rest of the wives, okay? She's like a sub-wife, okay? That's what a concubine is for all those who've probably been wondering about that. And you can go look these things up yourself or go do your own research, okay? Very interesting nonetheless. Concubine or concubinage, okay? Go look that up. And in some societies, they still practice, the concubinage, okay? All right. Now, the key is, so why am I bringing this up? Because for you women, if you take a betrothal, please keep it, okay? You have to keep that, okay? Don't violate it, that you end up being a concubine, okay? So, because if a man should still want to marry you, if you were to violate your vow, then, you may end up in this status right here. Okay? So you're still a wife, but you don't have the same, rights as the other wives. Okay? It's like a lower standard of wife. Okay? That's what a concubine is. And very important to know that. Very important for you all to know it out there. Okay? Who listen to me. And thank you for listening. Okay? So it's kind of like a sub-wife. Okay, that's what a concubine is. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's kind of like a woman that she still stays in the same house as everybody else. You know what I mean? And does the same thing everybody else does, but she doesn't have the same status as the regular wives do. So she's kind of like exactly what it says, a concubine. You know what I mean? So kind of just a woman, hey, When the man's ready to get it, he can go get it. I mean, you know what I mean. so so that's that. So like I said, built in sex partner, so to say. You know what I mean? Along with the other wives. I mean, it's just something that they practiced, in the Hebrew Israelite heritage. Okay, as you can see by looking at King Solomon, all his many concubines and princesses and wives and all that. But when he got old, he ended up making that mistake and that's the only reason why the United Kingdom of Israel, right, this one, the old one, right, even split up, was because, King Solomon, couldn't, his heart fell away from Yah because he had too many wives, okay? Those wives were going after all kind of idols and all that. As you can see here in verse 4, I'll read it, okay? For it came to pass when Solomon was old. The key is that he was old. He was an old man, okay? That his wives turned away his heart after other gods. See, that's the mistake he made that got the kingdom split apart, okay? And his heart was not perfect with Yah, his God, okay? As was the heart of David, his father, okay? David made some mistakes too, dealing with Bathsheba, but Solomon's was worse, okay? Because David never turned away from Yah. Solomon ended up turning away from Yah by dealing with those idols and images, of these many different women that he was picking. Because, you go to 11:1, you see right here, it says, but King Solomon loved many strange women. He loved everybody. You know what I mean? All kinds of women. It says, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, the women of the Moabites, the Elamites, the Edomites, right? The Zidonians and the Hittites. We don't know what kind of women those were, but, I'm talking about the Zidonians and Hittites. I'm not, probably maybe some Africans, I'm sure, okay? But that was his problem, okay? Because the Most High had warned the children of Israel about, taking these different wives only if they're going to end up turning us away onto those idols and images. Okay? As you can see right here, but Solomon, he was in love. So he kind of put love before Yah, and that's where he made his mistake at. He should never have done that, but only when he got old. He didn't do it in his young years. It's just when he got old, you know what I mean? I guess he quit caring about all that, worrying about impressing these women, and that's where he went wrong at. Because he should have got rid of those women if they approached him about some idols. But that's the danger of dealing with too many cultures. You got to make sure these women are like Ruth. Ruth the Moabitess, she's all about Yah, man. She wasn't about nothing else. She's all about Judah. She wasn't about nothing else. She wasn't about Jesus, Christian, Vishnu, or any other type of religion. Or back in that day, Chemosh, Milcom. Okay, those are some of the idols back in that day for the Moabites, right? Chemosh, Milcom, and all that kind of stuff there. And I'm sure things we've never heard of before. But she was all about Yah, YHWH, the true God. She wasn't about those idols and images. That's why she has a book in the Old Testament called Ruth. And that's why she was accepted by Yah, the God of Israel. And that's why she was accepted by our people. And that's why Ruth is connected still to this day to who? She's King David's great-grandmother. Okay? Boaz was an Israelite. Boaz was a Hebrew Israelite, black male. He purchased Ruth. Okay? Had sex with her. And the story goes on and on. Go read the book of Ruth. And that led all the way down to Jesse, which led all the way down to King David. Okay? So, we are heavily connected to the Moabites, okay? On that particular side of the line, okay? On the female side of the line, okay? So that's, connected to my family even today, all right? So that's cool. I mean, it's a good thing to know. And I'm sure, probably some of the Moabites who read that story, they probably smile. I hope they do. You know what I mean? To be connected to such a legacy. So anyway, the king's concubines. If you want to end up being a concubine, you better make sure you keep your word when you give your word to these Hebrew Israelite men as we get ready to make the Aliyah and go back home. Okay? Because you can only end up being a concubine, necessarily if there's something that, there's a reason, why you got yourself in that particular position. All right? Now, I told you what a concubine was, okay? Basically a wife or a sub-wife. Now, let's talk about the bride price a little bit, and then we're going to go. Bride price, okay. For the gentleman, in the Hebrew Israelite pantheon, I would say back during our days, or the days of what they call the Old Testament, sometimes we did purchase brides, you know what I mean? Because Boaz actually purchased Ruth, the Moabitess, okay? All right, sometimes we did, you know what I mean? All right, now in this day and time, that's kind of an ancient thing. When we get back to the land, I'm quite sure that, we'll probably practice those things again. All right? So the advice I gave you on other videos, don't spend all your money on brides, okay? Don't do that, okay? Don't break yourself over these brides. There's no need to do that, especially if they're not virgins. Because generally the bride price is reserved for a woman, who nobody's violated. Okay? All right? Doesn't mean you have to pay it for every single woman that you get, okay? Now, for me, it's not a bad thing if you have the money, right? If you have the money, it's not a bad thing to give the parents something, for, their daughter, because for me, daughters are priceless, right? So you can't really put a price tag on them. But, as we get ready to make the Aliyah back home, I'm sure that's something that we will probably approach again, and talk about with the gentleman and probably go back into doing that again, okay? That's for the future, okay? Right now, there's not much you can do about it, okay? That's something I think we should wait till we get home and worry about practicing such a thing, all right? But if you should have the coins and you want to pay, X amount of money to, a father for his daughter, then, hey, feel free. Okay, but let's look at it. Bride price, bride wealth, or bride token. What is it? It's money, it's property, okay? Or other forms of wealth paid by a groom for his family, okay? To the family of the woman he will be married to, okay? Or is just about to marry, okay? So go look that up. Do your research. That's what the bride price is all about. Generally, a virgin, okay? But if she isn't, then you can still pay, like I said, you can still pay a small bride price for her, to kind of show reverence to the parents, kind of thanking them, hey, thank a little thank you, for and it can also be other things. It can be property, tells you right there. It can be gifts. You don't have to be cash, money or credit. It can be gifts, whatever, property, cars, whatever. It could be anything in general that you give to the family, for allowing you to marry their daughter. So it's not a bad thing, okay? All right, so that's the bride price. All right, there, you see it right here. He got some cars and cash, and boy, you see the father back here looking crazy. But anyways, well, you see, hey, he want her, you know what I mean? So we're going to practice that stuff again in the future. So anyways, go do your own research on that. But that's what a concubine is, for all those who didn't know what a concubine was, okay? Like I said, I just see it as a built-in sex partner, when you ready to go do some things, you can go do it. So, that's kind of like her role, you know what I mean? Because her role is not the same as the other wives, because a concubine is not on the same level with the other wives for one reason or another. Okay? So if you're wondering about concubines, now you know. Go with this book and read for yourself and do your own research. All right? The bride price. Now you know what it's all about. Okay? And you can still practice this now if you should have the money, you know what I mean? Or you can promise it, whatever the case is. Okay? However you want to work it out. Whenever if the father's alive, you can go talk to him, like a man, and say, hey, I want to marry your daughter. He's like, okay, cool, no problem. But, hey, I'll pay this, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Whatever you want to do. Whatever your style is. You guys figure it out. I'm just here once again to make you aware of it. Okay, I'm not gonna tell you how to do it. You figure it out on your own. Okay, it's not good to be a copycat. Okay, figure your own style out. Do you, be you at all times. All right. All right, so that's the bride price. You see him kneeling down on one knee. He got the flowers, boy. He making it happen. He got the cash, the ring, the car, all kind of gifts up here. This father looks a little grieved over it, but anyway, I'm sure he's happy. But anyway, thanks for listening. Okay, look forward to a lot of these things happening. Okay, peace and y'all bless.